Sounds good. I'm going live now. Pressing the button.
Hi, and welcome back, everyone, to another exciting pirate news. We actually have some really, really good ones for you tonight. Of course, you got me, your quartermaster, and of course, you also have the one and only.
James O'Keefe, good to see y'all, folks.
And this is Steve. Hello, all.
And
Steve could also be the other one and only, so I don't want to jump in and be the exclusive on that.
No, I'll take other one and only. You can be the one and only, and I will be the other one and only. I'm good. I'm good.
You can be all the ones and only.
No, that's Malt.
Sure.
Who's unfortunately not joining us today, unfortunately. Next week, hopefully.
Yeah, Malt's house is getting demolished.
Oh, God.
And so I think the first one we wanted to go over this week has to do, and I got my face all shaved for you in celebration, even though I did it just really to make the missus angry at me. But the first one we wanted to talk about tonight was facial recognition. And so the ACLU did a huge win for the public in finding that there's a widespread use of facial recognition by police in Massachusetts. So that being said, they're really diving deep into what's going on and really going to be pushing for new legislation. And as every pirate out there should definitely be fighting for, every just concerned citizen should be fighting for, is to make sure that the tighter regulations go on. They shouldn't be able to access information without due process. And for the amount of use that they were using it for, it seems pretty excessive. Gentlemen,
yeah, specifically the RMV, they did a lot of municipalities, but also the RMV has been allowing local, state police, FBI to be able to do facial recognition searches of their database, which will be interesting because back last year they passed the police reform bill, which required police to get court orders, not a search warrant, which is a higher burden of proof, if they wanted to go and search the RMV database. Although, if it's an emergency, then of course everything goes out the window and they can just search. So
yeah, so like an Amber Alert or something like that, if they're looking for something, but that's generally a time-sensitive thing. Whereas a lot of from what I understand, a lot of what they've been using it for is something completely different. So that being said, what are your thoughts, Steve?
There's and I may bring this up a couple of times during this conversation. We'll see if I have the opportunity. Years ago when the Snowden revelations came out, I'm specifically referring to the NSA collecting call detail records on basically anyone making a phone call inside the United States. There was the argument made that the NSA's argument was, well, if we just collect it and don't look at it, it's not really surveillance. But it's only surveillance when we look at it. Well, the whole point in having a big collection of stuff is so that you can look at it. And I mean, now that, driver's license photos aren't analog, they're digital photographs. They can be stored, and they can be, algorithmically analyzed. So I hate to say it, I'm not really surprised. I'm really not surprised, because what do folks do when they collect lots of data? They find ways to use it. And this goes back to the idea behind primary uses and secondary uses. The primary use of your photo on a driver's license is to identify the holder of the driver's license, and not something else. What we're seeing here is, I think, would be considered secondary uses.
Is that Heisen surveillance there? Like the
Has to be.
Heisenberg uncertainty principle. If we don't look at it, it really isn't surveillance. But,
No, yeah.
until we look at it, then it becomes surveillance.
Yeah, it's sort of, except if, well, I mean, it would be a Heisen surveillance principle if when you looked at it, it changed.
So other issues that come up specifically for facial recognition, we found out, and we found out that Customs and Border Patrol has an agreement with JetBlue to use facial recognition for boarding if you're leaving from JFK in New York City or Logan in Boston. If you're going on an international flight.
I was going to say, we all know that, like, over the last few years, Customs and Border Patrol has just gotten a great reputation for, I don't necessarily want to say unlawful detentions, but detaining people without necessarily needing to detain people. And, I know in the Southwest, there was quite a lot of pushback against, requests to search vehicles that were basically traveling within 50 or 100 miles of the border with Mexico. It's, come on, JetBlue. You guys used to be such a cool airline.
And I just want to give a shout out. A lot of the links that we're going to discuss came through the weekly privacy civil rights news stories that's on the Defend the Fourth email list, specifically, and I'll so you can find them at warrantlist.org. But also, sorry, I should have done that. I'll tell you in a moment. Why don't you guys continue on? I'll look up the information I need.
I guess in terms of other forms of, I guess another area we could talk about are license plate readers. So there is, it was, yeah, so with license plate readers, my understanding is that we don't really have a comprehensive law in Massachusetts, and there's not really much in the line of court precedent that says when they are and cannot be used. But I gather that some of our legislators are trying to pass, state level legislation limiting them. Jamie, is that right?
Yeah, so Representative Sarah Peake in the Cape, from Provincetown, has proposed a bill to limit the use of license plate reader data. Let's see here. If passed, it would make it unlawful for state officials to use the readers to monitor or track activity protected under the First Amendment, and would limit any data retention to 14 days unless it is connected with a criminal investigation where there is a link between the data and the crime. So I think a while ago, Steve, I think you brought this up, the guy who was going over the Bourne or Sagamore Bridge.
Nope, not me.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we talked about it a while ago. There was a guy who basically they had a flag that when his car went into the Cape, then it would put a flag and they'd know he's in the area and they should go look for him.
He was trafficking drugs or something like that, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
So I'm not. It'd be interesting to see if this would go after that particular scenario. I mean, if it's an ongoing investigation. So,
are you talking about the gentleman who actually the only evidence that they had on him was how much he was going back and forth over the Sagamore, and that led to the investigation. They didn't have any other evidence other than this person just went back and forth all the time.
It could certainly be. I mean, I know the license plate played a part because they got tipped off from the license plate readers on the bridge that his car was going over it, and so that's how they found him. But I do just so I just want to quickly give a shout out to Mass Private Eye, who has been putting out a lot of great updates about news stories, with a privacy and surveillance focus for Massachusetts, the U.S., and around the world. You can find him at Mass Private Eye, as in the letter I, .blogspot.com, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. So I think the other thing that we wanted to talk about was something going on in Boston to do with gang databases.
I really do apologize, but if I may be excused from this, unfortunately.
No worries. We can wrap up. Good luck.
Thank you.
So the Boston City Council Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice has a hearing this Tuesday at, I believe, 1:30 p.m. We will put a link in the description to talking about their Boston Police Department's use of their gang database. Steve, what have we seen gang databases used for?
Well, the thing that comes to mind is actually BRIC, the Boston Regional Intelligence Center. This was, one of those fusion centers that's supposed to aggregate data from all other sources and share it with national intelligence. And they spent most of their time surveilling Veterans for Peace and Code Pink. That may not have been what you had in mind, but it's that's what came to my mind.
Yeah, I mean it's funny how all of these new surveillance and anti quote unquote domestic terrorism laws just always seem to get directed towards leftist groups or anti-war groups or pro legalization groups and things like that. Mm-hmm. They never seem to go after the white nationalists quite so much.
Yeah, there's one of the things the next couple of years are going to be interesting to watch. The next couple of years are always interesting to watch. I mean, that's just an axiomatic kind of thing. But in terms of like fancy surveillance stuff, what law enforcement is using now, what large corporations are using now will become cheaper and generally accessible to the average, Tom, Dick, and Harry in the next couple of years. So we'll see what it does for surveillance, which is, watching from below rather than watching from above. One can waste time pondering all sorts of silly nonsense. And, that's one of the things I waste my time pondering.
Well, I mean, we've already seen that happen. I mean, there was not so recently, but I know the case of the poisoning of Alex Navalny in Russia was interesting because it was various news organizations, including Bellingcat, that basically managed to identify what they purport were the people who were involved in poisoning Alex Navalny. For those of you who don't know, is a anti-Putin politician, civil rights of a sort activist in Russia. And I understand there's lots of different complaints about him as support for him. I'm just bringing this up, that what they found was they were able to use all this information on that they could just easily get off of the web. Sometimes I think they might have needed to pay for some of it to be able to see all the people who happened to be going wherever Navalny was going within a couple of days difference. And they got their locations, they got where they lived, they got their phone numbers, they got all this information about them. They used that to get their background, and even Navalny started calling them up, and like the final guy he punked by pretending to be someone higher up in the chain of command to say, hey, can you tell me how this, I have to write a report, can you tell me how this operation went out? I thought that was amusing. Well, so that when you talk about that surveillance, that's that information's there.
Well, just hypothetical. One of the my understanding was that AT&T for years, they made quite a lot of money responding to law enforcement requests for information. Because, if they've got to take the time to search and collate records, and, they can charge for that. And, it was, it was a nice secondary source of income. One of the, I'm curious to see how much that, goes into the private market over time. I mean, you do have things like, companies that will do relatively inexpensive searches. What used to be like employer background checks. You can look up a lot of the stuff these days. So, I guess I know phone records are off limits. There was a little mishap about that some years ago, but General what's his face, and somebody bought his mobile phone records for $20, and Congress said, "Oh, gee, we should do something about this."
Well, that's the thing.
$20, but you get the point.
Yeah. I mean, but that's an important point, because if a lot of the surveillance gets outsourced to private companies who stand to profit from it, whether it's AT&T or Clearview AI or Facebook, and so if we want to protect our privacy, it's not simply enough to say, you government, you can't get this without a warrant. But if the information's not being collected, or if we say, no, you cannot retain this information more than 14 days, then suddenly it becomes a lot harder for the government to spy on us, especially in a mass surveillance method.
Dear J. Edgar Hoover, your tapes will destruct in 30 seconds.
Well, I'm sure Nixon wished for that. So anything else?
No, that's all I got for tonight.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much for for being here, Steve, and thanks for Joe for for being here. Unfortunately, you had to leave early, so we'll put a link in the description of anything we talked about. Again, you can check out Mass Private Eye with the letter I. .blogspot.com. You can always find us at masspirates.org, and please like this video, subscribe to our channel. We go and aim to put out a new video every Sunday at 7:30 is when we plan to go live. And as always, click that bell. Thank you very much, and we hope you all have a wonderful, safe week.
Have a good one.
Take care. Wow, we got a